For number 12, we've got basically two types of questions. The A, B, C, all going from, as theta goes from pi over 2 to pi. So that is, if the angle moves from pi over 2 to pi, that's over here, pi over 1 if you want. So as we move in this direction, what is happening to the angles? Well, what we do know is at the top here, assuming this is the unit circle, our coordinate is 1 comma 0, right? This point, do those in red. This point up here, the point down here is going to be, x is going to be -1, y is going to be 0. So we can use this to answer these. So as we go from pi over 2 to pi, how does sine vary? Sine is going to be the y coordinates. Sine is going to go from, wait a minute, I got this backwards, didn't I? How did I do that? X is 0, y is 1. Okay. X is 0, y is 1. So 0, 1. So sine is going to go from 1 down to 0 because it's the y coordinate. Cosine, the second part here, it's going to vary from 0 to -1. And then finally, what's going to happen to tangent? Well, tangent's going to be a ratio, right? So it's going to be, so we want to think of tangent. Tangent's going to be y over the x coordinate. Y starts at 1, so it's going to start at 1 over 0, which is undefined. And so it's going to go from, you want to think of it, it's what this would be, think of it as infinity, positive infinity. And when it gets down to here, it's going to be, wait a minute, let's see, I got this backwards. X is 0 to 1, okay. 0, 1. Y is 1, right. And then it's going to go towards x is -1 to 0. So this is, well, I guess, -0 if you want to think about it, but it'll go from infinity to 0. I'll just check how they got it listed. It could, see, negative infinity. Yeah, I guess it's because it's the x's, so x moves as it gets away from 0 is going to be a negative number. These are all going to be negatives coming down for the x's. The x is getting going from smaller to larger. And yeah. And one way we could do this is we could actually look at the graph of tangent. So let's do this because it's a little harder to understand. So let's look at, and again, the whole key behind this is so that you can understand. So tangent, when we look at its graph, it's hard to see what's going on. So what we're going to do is we're going to do what's called a zoom trig, number 7. So it fits to the trig functions better. So here's 0, here's pi over 2. So we go pi over 2 to, this is pi right here. Okay, so that's these markers are going to give it. So what I can see is as it goes from pi over 2, see if it'll let me, won't let me draw on here, to pi, we're coming from negative infinity, right? That's what, and then we go towards 0. That's the best way to look at it. Then, so why we've got this graph here is probably helpful. We can look at what happens to sine as we go from 0 to pi over 2. So 0 starts here, we go to pi over 2. So this one is, the x-coordinate is 1, the y-coordinate is 0. So if we're going from pi over 2, from 0 to pi over 2, so this part for the DEF, y is going from 0 to 1. For the cosine, we're going from 1 to 0. And then what about tangent? Well, let's come back to this graph, and we see as we go from 0 to pi over 2, which is this first marker, we're going from 0 to infinity. That's the best way. And again, for these, we could have looked at the graph. I was just looking at the unit circle, but we could do that.